Good morning. Welcome everyone to the meeting of the Barrie Police Service Board for March 19th, 2026. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Begin with our land acknowledgement. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it is customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. We would like to acknowledge this sacred land on which the Barrie Simcoe Emergency Service Campus operates. It has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Wendat and Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and language. Thank you. Our agenda was distributed in advance. A motion to approve today's agenda. Commissioner Thompson, respond. Any questions, comments, amendments to the agenda? None. Those in favor? I should add Mayor Nuttall and Member John are virtually this morning. I'll hand it over to you, Chief. To any conflicts of interest with respect to the agenda. Seeing none, great. I'll hand it over to you, Chief, to introduce our newest staff sergeant, an individual who's not is well known to this board. Chief Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite wonderful to do today at the board meeting. So I'll introduce Staff Sergeant, the newly minted Staff Sergeant, Tony Tellerico. Tony began her policing career as a cadet with the Barrie Police Service in 1998, becoming a constable in 1999. Over the years, she gained experience across multiple units, including patrol, investigative services, community and school programs, media relations, and training. Promoted to sergeant in 2016, she served as a patrol supervisor before moving into the community services unit, where she oversaw school officers, crime prevention initiatives, and chaired the Barrie Situation Team. Collaborate Barrie. I will note at this point that now Staff Sergeant Tellerico was involved in some of the initial research that the Barrie Police Service did in evidence-based policing at intersections with the schools or community services officers, as well as the Collaborate Barrie in a randomized control trial. So very appreciative of her patience with that. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Tony worked closely with me and a number of other officers in this very room in the Police Operations Center afterwards. She served as the executive officer for Chief Greenwood. She has since held sergeant roles at the courts, tactical support, and crimes against persons unit. Recently promoted to staff sergeant, Tony now leads a uniform platoon. Outside work, she enjoys family time with her two adult kids, Maya and Luke, and thanks them for their unwavering support in such a demanding career. I would note that from the office of the chief, very appreciative of now Staff Sergeant Tellerico's insightful and invaluable willingness to share a different perspective and constructively challenge current practice. So thank you for that sound voice. So with that, I will introduce Sergeant Tellerico.
Chief, I'll hand it back to you again to update us on the budget variance for year end 2025, please, sir.
Thank you, Chair. And it's packages there. I will bring up our finance manager, Hi Turner, to speak to this in some more detail if there are questions as well. I did want to bring to the board's attention that we are in a deficit and just comment on some of the issues and reasons behind that. Appreciating the human organization salaries were an impact in that, specifically police with lower than projected salary gapping, civilian salaries in terms of backfill of contract positions for parental leaves, overtime, and two different kinds of that overtime, one being overtime shift supplement, which we actually did reduce, but the challenge we face in a service that daily responds and sometimes to situations that we cannot control. We did see an increase in, for instance, significant events, as to no surprise to the board or to the community. I would think are a number of those public incidents that caused us to incur unexpected costs, and I'm speaking specifically to a double homicide in the now unhoused area. We lost 2 citizens, as well as another. We had a missing person homicide, a stabbing investigation, a number of calls that required substantial resources to be brought to bear and are not planned for because we cannot plan for them. And they were a reactive response to that because we were challenged. So, if you want to speak a little further on any of that, and just to help provide some more color, and I think certainly we have benefits as well.
Yeah, I would just maybe expand on some of the overages we're seeing in the benefits area. So benefits is one of our biggest pressures for 2025. The areas that we're kind of seeing the pressures are prescription drugs. The cost of prescription drugs have increased 18.4% year over year. And that's not unique to us. That's kind of across the client base. We're also experiencing increased usage in our mental health supports. So that has increased, which we view as a positive, looking at about 25% increase between 2024 and 2025. We do have our government benefits as well, CPP and EI. I would point to CPP in particular. The max contribution increased about 9.2% between 2024 and 2025. And then lastly, just benefits as kind of a proportion to salaries. So as salaries go up, then benefits kind of go up just naturally as a percentage of salaries. So those are the biggest pressures the chief mentioned on the sworn side for salaries. Really just a matter of not achieving our salary gapping target through natural salary gapping. We were closer to full complement in 2025 than we've been in the past couple of years. On the civilian side, yes, we've had an elevated number of parental leaves. And then on the casual salaries, just seeing some pressure from the activity at the courts building, and then just some training for special. On the positive side, in our operating expenditures, we did have a surplus of about 530,000, some in software maintenance, which we recovered through some of our grant programs. And then we also introduced a spending cutoff in August of 2025. And through those efforts, we kind of achieved savings of about 350,000 there. On the grant side, again, we were in a surplus position, just over $500,000. A big part of that is we received ministry approval to, provide some expenditures that occurred in 2024, and that resulted in a surplus of about 250,000. And then just some of the other grants, we've been able to allocate additional salaries and technology through those grants as well. Revenue has been pretty stable. We've seen some increase in criminal record checks, paid duties. We've seen some declines in interest revenue, and those are, for the most part, offsetting each other. So those would be the main variances that I'd point to.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. So, projected deficit is 975,000. I know those listening may not know. Our operating reserve currently is 168,000, right? And what year was it 23 and 24 we returned our surplus monies to the city of Barrie?
Yeah, we've made 2 transfers back to the city. So in fall of 2023, the board approved an allocation of our unallocated surplus, which was about 1,266,000. And then as part of our 2023 year end, we contributed another 260,000 for a total of about 1.5 million.
I'm not sure who was first, but I'll go with Mr. Khan. So you have a question? And Marinello?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the information provided through you, Chair, to staff. I don't think it can, it should be understated that an organization of this size with these duties and responsibilities is typically expected to operate and walk a fine line with perfect revenue and perfect expenses balanced at 0% variation or variance, and that's just hardly reasonable under perfect circumstances. And as described by the chief, they weren't perfect circumstances necessarily. So I do think that if we were to compare this to any other budget or any other household operating budget, they're oftentimes we're told by the best financial planners in the world, et cetera, put 10% aside for personal savings and a rainy day fund, et cetera. And we don't always have that opportunity. And as just briefly, momentarily ago described, the board did elect with best guidance to return funds to the city in that I believe it was 2.5 or 2.56 $1 million amount, so that the city could put those funds to good use as they saw fit, with an understanding that we might be recalling or making a request to recall some of those funds at a future date. So I think just in terms of a recap, that's important to state. I do have a question. I do appreciate that the leadership and staff had the awareness to, as soon as they noticed the direction or the trajectory for the year, to cut off what was known as discretionary spending. My question through you, Chair, to the chief is there any, even though it's discretionary, just a little bit of color on that, is there anything that sets the service behind because we had to, or they elected to stop that spending? Is there anything that we need to note about that election to delay other spending?
Through you, Chair. As you can appreciate, it's those are primarily in the areas of staff development and appreciating in the complexity of policing today. It's training. A lot of that is training. And we put off as much as we can, and in these certain situations and circumstances, as soon as we saw that we were running a deficit, we then had to pause and hold off on all that. But appreciating at some point, there are requirements that are necessary for officers and some of our civilian staff to have recognized training that the province does require. And so it's we're trying to find that balance. And so again, we start this year and we're looking at what we can get our training in and make sure we get the courses that they must have and they have to have. And then there's that staff development side where we can start to expand in different areas. Those are generally what comes at the cost of this, and which is a shame, really, because that really allows this service to provide a better service if we're able to, expand our skill sets. I hope that answers your question, sir.
It does, Chair. I would recommend or like to recommend that if we can have a further conversation at a later date regarding the impact of that type of a decision, if we as a board would provide any direction to the service in any future event that this might happen where we find ourselves in a similar position, where's the threshold regarding delaying training or something like that. So if we could have that conversation at a later date. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Turner, real quick. If I'm not mistaken, is the variance that we're looking at less than 0.1% of the overall budget? Is that what we're off by?
So the total deficit is a variance of about 1.4% of our total budget.
Moving in. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. 1.4. Thank you.
Or no?
Yeah, thanks. I think first of all, just to recap, we as representatives of the city said to our greater board team that the surpluses should be returned to the city. And I fully believe that is the most transparent way to account for what was a very large growing number of taxation that was then sitting outside of the city, and not totally accounted for in a way that I think that I felt totally comfortable with. And the commitment when the dollars were returned to the city was pretty clear, right? If we enter a time period where we're seeing deficits instead of surpluses again, that the request would be put back to the city, and it would be fulfilled, obviously, because that's the responsibility. So you can't say one thing on the good days and another thing on the bad days. It's a you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. The good years, let's hope we have far more of those without these types of investigations and shutdowns of entire areas for many days, weeks that we saw. And in regards to the parental leaves, these are good news stories for families, good news stories for the service as a whole. Maybe we need to adjust for future years what our expectations are in terms of parental leave and times, and I'll leave that with your team chief to make sure it's adjusted for future. But as we have more folks that we've been bringing on to get the complement back up to what is considered a full complement today, bringing on far more of the special constables than we've seen in the past. These are things that are going to have they're going to have implications going forward. And so we don't want to see deficits. We don't like to see deficits in the scheme of the last, or the purview of the last 3.5 years. Funding this deficit will result still in a surplus existing in the relationship between the city and the police force. So I will leave it there and wait for the rest of the motion to be dealt with.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. So I agree with everything that's been said, and look, we had a surplus of just over 1.5 million that we returned to the city with the, direction that if we ever found a deficiency, we would take care of it because of that and the transparency. But just looking at, some of the circumstances, and I think this needs to be highlighted, this isn't an operational issue. This is, it's always passed on to the police. And if you look at, we had a little bit of a shortfall in operation in 2024. There was some horrific incidents in our city. And then again, with the encampment, double homicide, the increase in benefits. So the budget committee of this organization is normally within reason. Yeah, we had some surpluses a few years ago, 2022, 2023. But I believe that was, we received more grant funding and some allocated funding for courts that we weren't expecting. But if you look at it, it's really things that are dropped on the police and incidents that, you know, I believe our council is trying to show a better path forward to hopefully not have these in the future, which is challenging in itself, the social issues. But yeah, so I support what's going to be the motion of repayment from the city. But yeah, I just think it needs to be highlighted that this isn't mismanaged. This isn't bad, you know, operational. This is things that are totally out of the control of our board and our service.
Strong, please.
Thanks. I would agree with all of the comments as well, and that these many of these items are out of our control and things that we just don't have control over. But we're almost at that time where we're going to start meeting again as the Budget and Finance Committee to start doing the next year's budget. And I'd like to ask Mr. Turner if at those meetings we can have a more fulsome discussion about the things that we don't know and the things that we can't control and what our best estimates are, like using, for example, past data about major crimes or looking at other municipalities and then trying our best to come up with those estimates. And I think that we do that. Like the swing is about the same, like whether we're in a surplus or a deficit, we're always kind of like in the same area. But having more, like for me as a board member, to have more color on that, to be able to ask more questions and just have that discussion as part of the budget meetings, I think would be beneficial and just really help to prepare for situations where we're in a surplus or a deficit.
Thank you, Mr. Any other questions? So if we apply the 168,356 surplus or reserve we have on our books, that leaves an outstanding balance of 806,931. I'd like to entertain a motion from the board to request the city.
Yes. So move.
Seconded. Strong. Further conversations on this? Those in favor? Thank you. Mr. Khan, is this better now? The sound?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. There seem to be a couple of them that are off, but yours is good. Thanks.
There were 4 items in today's consent agenda that were distributed in advance. Freedom of Information Report, collection of identifying information in certain circumstances. Those are both annual reports, our monthly human resource report, and our monthly public complaints. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Khan has a question, please. Yes,
thank you, Chair. And this is through you to the chief. Just with regard to the one regarding the item regarding collection of or attempt to collect identifying information. There's an interesting pattern there in that it has a bunch of zeros in the column in terms of numbers of attempts to collect information as well as information that was collected, and it's across the board. And normally numbers fill those columns or those fields, and I was just curious if we could get some information around why it appears there were none and none successfully. Is that a change in practice policy, or why would we not have any data in those fields?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So the broader picture here across Ontario, I would argue there's probably no police services that have any numbers there. And this speaks to directly to what the legislation was trying to capture within Ontario and within Canada. Maybe I'll use the reference to our south of the 49th parallel. They have something called stop and frisk, and where there's a there are individuals that are on the street, and police are can walk up to those individuals and articulate that they can search those individuals. That is not common practice. That is in Canada, nor Ontario, nor this city. It is a reflection that our members that are out on the road that engage with the public, when they are required to identify, and if they had occasion to search an individual, they're using the legislation that is currently in existence for that specific incident to deal with that matter. So an officer attends a certain situation, someone is to be arrested, there are lawful grounds for that officer to both identify and search that individual. Under the Highway Traffic Act, under a number of legislations, officers are able to identify and in the criminal aspect, in some limited aspects in the Highway Traffic Act, they can search. So our officers, I actually would be concerned, and not it's necessarily wrong, if there is an instance that I cannot actually think about, like I couldn't articulate right now, an officer believed without, I don't say without justification, had some cause to do a search without lawful authority, but be able to articulate it, I'd be challenged to present that to you, sir. This captures year over year pretty much what our people have been doing. The police officers in Ontario that are and in the city of Barrie, they are mandated by law and protected by law and allowed to by law in certain circumstances search, and they maintain that. They do not outside of those laws search and identify people. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the Chief. Thank you. So bottom line is this is differentiating between what is done under a lawful procedure or context versus random search and request for information.
And that's what I would describe it as. Like there'd be far more, and I can't come up with that situation because I think there's an expectation of Canadian society, let alone broader society, that police don't have the ability to just walk up to anyone and start diving into their pockets. That's uncomfortable and not a world we want to live in.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I think it's important for our members of the public to understand the difference there. Thank you.
Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just to clarify, there probably would have been numbers 4 or 5 years ago when carding was allowed, and that would be basically the term most people would know. I know there's a number that's 719 form or something like that, but I think when legislation changed that we were able to do that without a receipt of reasoning for the search. So I think that's where we would have seen numbers in the past. It was called coding.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions with respect to the consent? I have one. Chief probably misleads to be better to answer. Freedom of information requests. Just going, in 2020 we received 255. 2025 647. Who's making these requests, and what do they relate to? What information are they looking for? Because and my secondary question, the resources we need to respond to these requests. Is that the Chief or Ms. Lees?
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, so in 2020, the number was 255. That was during COVID. So we actually did see a large reduction of FOI requests and all of our services during COVID. So that is a little bit of an anomaly there, but it has steadily risen. I think it's just the climate of society. More people are looking for information. We have more information available now than we did before, with use of body-worn cameras and things like that. So there is more information out there for people to request. Most of the requests, as you can see, are personal information. So that's individuals just looking for their own information, occurrences that they've been a part of, that sort of thing.
Thank you. A motion to receive the consent agenda. Member Thompson, Mr. Khan, any further questions? Those in favor? Thank you. Back to you again, Chief Johnston, for your update to the board and the community, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just here to bring this up here. So, thank you, Chair and Board, for the opportunity to once again update both the board as well as the community, some of the events that our members have been involved in over the last weeks. The Barrie Police hosted the 2026 Polar Plunge for Special Olympics on Sunday, February 22nd. While I was unfortunately out of town and unavailable to attend, and I legitimately was, and I don't mean to, having said that, Deputy Chief Burke and Inspector Moore and our very own Special Olympian Nick Cunningham joined more than 50 plungers in braving the icy waters of Kemperfeld Bay and raised more than $14,000. So great work by the team there. Members of the Barrie Police Service joined in the coldest night of the year walk on February 28th in support of Youth Haven. According to the event website, almost $86,000 was raised, which is 121% of their target. A special note of thanks to our citizens on patrol who were present and assisted in the event. Deputy Chief Burke attended the Simcoe Engage and Empower and with Dialogue second annual Ramadan Iftar dinner on Thursday, March 12th. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims around the world fast from dawn to sunset, and Iftar is the evening meal to break the fast each day. We were honored to be invited and welcomed to this event. March is Fraud Prevention Month, and our fraud unit, specifically Detective Constable Chris Nicholson, has been working with corporate communications on a series of social media posts and media releases to bring attention to the many different types of frauds we've seen in our community. So if anyone's been on social media, but kudos to the team. Some phenomenal work going on there. Notes on our meeting and partnerships over the last few weeks. In February 22nd and 24th, we attended and presented at the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Information and Technology Summit, Beyond the Status Quo, New Ways of Delivering Public Safety Technology, and the opportunity to share some of the work that's being done here in the city of Barrie. February 25th, we met with members of a number of academic institutions regarding a micro research leadership course that's being planned for the Barrie Police Service. Also met with Dr. Chris G. Comentonio from Dalhousie University to discuss the potential for enhancements to our community safety survey based on research he and a number of other academics have done on behalf of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police and Public Safety Canada. That paper being developing a common data standard for measuring attitudes towards police Canada. Will be more of an apples to apples, oranges to oranges measures. March 4th, I met with Board Member Khan to prepare for our upcoming panel discussion at the Canadian Association of Police Governance Virtual Summit. March 17th, just on Tuesday night, we held our first community conversation series regarding technology and the use by police, as well attended both virtually and in person, and relatively well. So, and we had some special guests from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, as well as the Ontario Law Society. So very appreciative for their attendance. Significant occurrences. On Friday, February 20th, Barrie Police assisted Ontario Provincial Police following a motor vehicle collision on Highway 400, just south of Mapleview Drive, around 5:30 p.m., involving two male suspects who had fled the scene. Around 6:30 p.m., the first suspect, a 21-year-old man, was located stuck in the snow. He was arrested and carried back to the highway by officers. Given the severity of the first suspect's condition, officers feared the second suspect, dressed similarly, would be in even greater jeopardy. Roughly 7 p.m., the second suspect, a 20-year-old man, was found buried in the snow, immobilized in the swamp. Officers worked painstakingly to extricate him from the snow and carried him back toward the highway, where they were met by Barrie Fire Services, who deployed a rescue site. Great work, the team there. The Barrie Police Service is warning residents about a new scam involving a mail caller claiming to be an officer with the Barrie Police Service, contacting victims about suspicious activity with their bank accounts. In one instance, a victim also received an email containing a fake police badge and identification card in an attempt to make the scam appear more legitimate. The fraudulent badge was poorly produced and contained several obvious red flags, including a crest that does not match the official Barrie Police Service crest, as well as the image was sent from a free email service provider, whereas all Barrie Police Service members have barriepolice.ca email addresses. If you are unsure whether a caller is a legitimate Barrie Police member, advise the caller that you will hang up and contact the Barrie Police Service directly through the non-emergency line. Call the official non-emergency line at 705-725-7025 and follow the prompts to be connected to the officer by name. If the call is legitimate, Barrie Police Service officer will be easily reachable through the official channels. At approximately 3 a.m. on Friday, March 6th, the Barrie Police conducted a traffic stop on Dunlop Street West between Francis Street North and Eccles Street North for a suspected impaired driver. 25-year-old female driver was arrested and charged with operation while impaired, blood alcohol concentration over 80, and the 29-year-old male passenger fled. Police located the male a short distance away. As a result of an interaction between the male and the police, the male was transported to the local hospital in serious condition. The SIU is now invoked their mandate and will now be investigated. A couple of upcoming events. We do have our second community conversation series coming up regarding face matching technology, facial recognition, with an esteemed panel of experts to address concerns across the board. It's not a pro-con, it's more of a information and a question and answer for the community. We're excited to see that. On April 20th, we have our recruit graduation ceremony. A number of our recruits are coming back from the Ontario Police College, 5 of them. So we're excited to see them come back. We have supervisor training for our members across the organization. And on May 14th is the Barrie Police Service Awards ceremony to celebrate some of the great work being done by both our community members, but also our sworn members and civilian members across the organization. With that, Chair, I will hand it back to you unless there's any questions.
Questions from the board for Chief John? John, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the chief. I think that we've had this conversation before, or I've asked this question, or somebody has not that long ago, but about the incidents of impaired driving. And it just seems to me anecdotally that there are more impaired drivers and that the impaired drivers are causing a lot of harm in our city. You referenced one such incident. I know there was another incident also in downtown Barrie where the team was struck by an impaired driver and is currently in a hospital. And I'm just curious, is there an increase in impaired driving? And if we are seeing this, are we planning to do anything else as a service to try to mitigate that? And that's something.
Through you, Chair, thank you. We are seeing an increase. I don't have the exact number in front of me. We are seeing an increasing trend of that. Our corporate communications was already put to work in terms of addressing that, in terms of specific strategies, as was the evidence-based policing unit with respect to research around better targeting of the messaging, but also geographic concentrations of those locations where we're seeing more of it to be more appropriate and targeted in our response to address it. appreciating that this is generally found in when police have proactive time and are able to set up things like ride or do those traffic stops. But at the same time, we are seeing that increasing trend, and it is concerning. You would think in today's society that one is a no-brainer, but apparently not. So you'll see far more messaging from the Barrie Police Service already being released about making good choices. You can sit behind the wheel.
Additional for the chief. I would just like the polar plunge to raise 14 grand, and unfortunately, it was during the gold medal medal hockey. So you spend a lot of time. That concludes our open agenda for today. Motion to move in camera in accordance with section 44(1)B, 44(1)D of Community Safety and PCI. Barry Thompson, those in favor?